And hello again from WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. Happy Monday. I'm sorry I just said that to you. My name's Josh Manning. I am deputy managing editor for assignment here at the Western Journal. Joining me on my right, Andrew Shasha. He is senior head of features.
Editor of features, yes.
Senior editor of features, head editor of features, something like that. On my left, Michael Austin, one of our crack reporters here at the Western Journal. We've got a packed show for you today. We're going to be talking about military entrance exams, what's happening there. It looks like they're changing due to some recent insights about what happens when you use the same test for both sexes. We're going to be talking about immigration conditions. If you've been watching the news this morning, you have seen some, what would have been called super disturbing pictures in the past that are apparently okay now. We're also going to be doing a little bit of batting a little cleanup on Biden's fall when he was ascending to Air Force One last week. We've got some new stuff on that we want to show you. First off, though, let's talk military entrance exams. Michael, take it away.
Yes, so the Army Combat Fitness Test. This is a test that they have soldiers do in the military to determine, how fit they are for battle, whether they should be up for promotions or for certain job selections. And the Army put quite a bit of effort into making this test over the past few years gender neutral, to where everyone is judged on their own merits for the same standards, and that seems like equality to me. But as it turns out today, with today's left, that is not good enough. Instead, the left wants everyone to be judged based on their sex and their race, and so
does that mean before everybody had to do the same number of push-ups, the same number of chin-ups, the same test,
the same standards applied to everyone?
Okay,
and they were all judged on that scale.
Okay, and
what this led to was a 65% fail rate for women and a 10% fail rate for men. And
oh my.
The left, of course, doesn't want equality of opportunity, equality of, sharing the same standards. They want equality of outcomes.
Yeah.
And so whether it destroys the effectiveness of the military or not, whether it cheats certain males out of a job that they are qualified for or not,
or more qualified for,
they're going to force the outcomes that they want. They're going to force, just as many women getting promotions and getting jobs as men. And so they're wanting it. It looks like that the military is considering changing the Army Combat Fitness Test, the ACFT, to have different standards to where each gender would be graded on a percentile of how they are compared to their peers,
other people
in their
that gender.
Yeah.
Well, man, if I were a male then and I wanted to make the top 10th of the top 1%, I would identify as a woman.
Yes.
And I would be judged on those standards. Man, I would look like a frickin' Navy SEAL.
That's an interesting part of this, because if you're a man and you're good enough to be in the military, but this new system pushes you out, just identify as a woman.
Absolutely. Boom. You're back in. Yeah. You're not only are you not out, you're in the top quartile then, or the top quintile.
And with Joe Biden's new push to for transgender equality in the military, nobody's going to push against you if you're just I'm a woman.
They can't.
It will be spectacular. It will be absolutely spectacular. And I can't wait to see, fellas, the fatigues that they use and the standards they use for pregnant women who are 9 months pregnant who are taking this test. I think if they can sit up on their own, that probably makes it. If they can make it to the kitchen and get a cup of coffee, that probably qualifies them for combat right there. Yeah. Because we know if there's one thing our enemies are, it's civil and decent to pregnant women.
Of course.
What this really does, I think, to me, is it discredits the women that actually are qualified, that actually are working hard enough to be at the same level as a lot of men. And at this point, they're just kind of giving them free brownie points just for being a woman, and that's just kind of demeaning in my view. So.
No, absolutely. The feminists and just kind of the cultural left put themselves in this horrible position when they want the equality of outcome that they so desperately crave. They put themselves in a position where, they could shoot for equality, which is what has been discussed for centuries, as equality for women. I don't think anyone can argue against equality for everyone. It's a good thing. That is an innately good thing. But when we start, measuring people up equally, then the result being, not exactly what I would have liked, results in a push for the opposite, where now we need to divide women out and need to measure them differently because they can't swing it. Mm-hmm. So which is it? Essentially, the left has been put in a position where they now have to choose. Is it worse to say women can't be men and can't swing it as men, so we need to measure them differently, or to say they can and let them fail under the standard that is the male standard?
Right.
Well, I would like to see some of the leftists who support this. I would like to see them fly in planes that are piloted by people who scored, say, in the lowest quartile of the piloting tests,
right?
But are minorities or this or that and the other, something that merits a special consideration. Would they fly on a plane with that person? Clearly, I mean, the answer obviously is no, they would not. And the flying on a plane is dangerous. Going to war is infinitely more dangerous. And what is just so... well, there are a lot of things that are wretched about this. One in particular, though, is that, as usual, the politicians don't pay the price for this.
No.
But the people who do pay the price are, well, first off, the women. And secondly, team members who are counting on them, and if they end up being the weak link in the chain and other people get hurt or get killed, that's bad too. But the people who suffer for it the most are women.
Yeah.
You get out there and it turns out you can't cut it.
Yeah.
ISIS isn't going to let you play. ISIS is going to grab you by the hair, take you back to a cave, and rape you to death.
As it turns out,
that's a really bad way to go.
The enemy's forces are not worried about making everything equal.
Yeah, they're
women.
not. They're not. What they're worried about, as somebody said, I think somebody said it in here the other day, the military exists to kill people and break things.
Yes,
that's what they're supposed to do. Yeah. And you want the people who can kill the most things and the most people and break the most things in the shortest amount of time possible to make sure that the war or the conflict lasts as short as possible. Anything that dilutes that means the conflict drags on longer and you risk more and more civilian deaths. This is not good for anyone. There's no... Putting aside our conservative sort of bias, I can't think of anyone this is actually good for.
No.
I mean, there's no practical positive outcome from this.
No, because on top of it, you're talking about
I guess the country's enemies. But
you're talking about the physical ramifications and the dangers of this physically, in terms of warfighting. The kind of broader cultural implication and pain is that it's a huge emotional and mental pain on both men and women when we see that this becomes the highest standard, is this equality at all costs mentality, right? Is that we now have a situation where folks are going to be measured by that standard and they are not going to measure up. And what happens? Instead of viewing people as complements who maybe are better at one thing and worse at another thing, as a man, I'm not as organized as many of my female colleagues. And when we have, this standard that equality is everything, okay, well then in schooling, when we're demanding little boys to be as organized and as patient as their female counterparts, what happens? It's damaging to their mental health. And it's the same thing across the board when we stop realizing that people are complements and that some people are not meant for certain things. We damage everyone mentally and emotionally.
And another part of this is that the third wave feminists are doing everything they can to just force women into all of the areas that are typically dominated by men. They're creating these incentives where, okay, we'll give you free handouts to be in these STEM fields. We'll give you all these opportunities that men don't get that are more qualified than you. And we're seeing that with the military too. And it all harkens back to me, to this idea that came out of third wave feminism that came from people like Simone de Beauvoir about if women were allowed to make the decisions that they want to make, a lot of them would choose to stay at home or choose fields that typically make less money than men because typically when left to their own devices, women like to do jobs where they interact with people.
They're caretakers.
And men tend to like to work with things like in the STEM fields.
And things scale, people don't.
And so if we let people make their own choices, a lot of women will choose to be full-time mothers. A lot of women will choose these jobs that make less money. And according to the feminists, that is wrong. And we should force them to do things that they don't want to do. Simone de Beauvoir even said that. She said that we can't let them make their own decisions because too many of them will make the wrong decision.
Then what you end up doing is saying, if you don't go person I've picked out or person who made a certain score on the ACT or the MCAT or whatever, if you don't go into STEM, I'm putting a gun to your head. You can either go into STEM or you can be fined. If you don't pay the fine, you'll go to jail. If you resist going to jail, you'll be shot. That's the way it works. That's why we have to be so careful with the power that we give government. That is a terrifying thing. And you're right. Women, we see the thing that one of the things Jordan Peterson did such a great job of bringing out is that the Scandinavian countries, they have done that. The Scandinavian countries figured it out. They made things as egalitarian as possible. They've gone insanely far trying to keep things equal. Turns out when you give women as much choice and as much freedom as possible, they self-select away from the STEM fields. Which I could have told you, any American could have told you 50 years ago, but we can't now because it's not politically correct. What do you do? Did you want to make one more point?
Yeah, one last thing is that, this is just a perfect example of equality of outcomes. And sometimes it's really hard for us to explain to people who are like, well, what's wrong with equality of outcomes? What that can lead to. And I remember, when I was first going on my conservative journey, I was trying to explain it to one of my liberal friends, and he's like, well, yeah, how does any of this affect you, though? Why do you care? And this is, it's destroying institutions. It's creating these environments where competency and equality is not treasured. It is discredited, and it is fought against.
It is profoundly unloving, too. To love someone is to want the very best for them. And forcing someone into an industry or a career that will not be fulfilling to them, but doing it to someone else because you feel like that fulfills your moral impetus, that is not loving. That is selfish. And it's not wanting the best for the person. It's wanting to feel good in your own stupid head.
And people might get caught up with you saying forcing people. And I think what you mean by that, and what I certainly would mean by that, is that they're creating these incentive structures where, hey, women, it's a lot easier for you to enter here than it is the typical man. And it's easy, and if they're rewarded for not doing as much work, and so those incentive structures kind of force women into areas that they wouldn't normally choose.
Yes, distorting the marketplace. You could even argue that essentially you're tricking people into taking paths they wouldn't normally take because you think that's a better path. That is not a loving thing. To love someone is to want what's best for them. That is not love.
And that has been the left's game down to making fun of people like Sarah Palin for being mothers and caretakers first and foremost.
That's the ultimate sin, to be able to do both. We're going to flog this for just a minute more, though, because this raises another question. They want equality. They want equality across the whole, or equity across the whole. By the way, when you hear the word equity now, you're seeing that more and more. What that means is equality of outcome, not equality of opportunity. What equity means is people being spread out evenly across any spectrum, regardless of any trait that they have.
Every field is 50% men, 50% women.
Yeah. So, and culturally, whatever the proportion of whites
13% black, 6% Asian, 75% white.
So my question to Simone de Beauvoir, or whatever her name
is one of the most influential intersectional feminists of the last century.
Which is to say socially useless. Functionally useless. If the bomb were to go off, if we were reduced to sticks and stones tomorrow, Simone would be useless. Maybe she could pull a plow. I don't know. I don't know what she looks like. But anyway, if you want equity across all spectrums, then what do you do with prison? 90% of prison inmates are men. So what do you do with that? There are really only two options. If you guys can think of another one, I'd be interested. You can lower, you can increase the threshold for what men do that gets them jailed, but leave the threshold the same for women. You would basically empty out 78%, something like that, of the prisons. You would have a lot of males who would be in prison who would then be out on the street, but you'd have the same percentage of men and women in prison. Or you could do the more interesting thing, which is to lower the threshold for what women can do that gets them arrested. So go out with trousers instead of a skirt, and you're getting thrown back in jail, or you're getting thrown in jail. There's no way for this to work out. This is human nature makes us the sexes are different. Period.
Yeah, I mean, human nature, males tend to be more aggressive, and when you go to the most aggressive people, they're all males, and this is biological. Right. But unfortunately, the response to what you're contending would be by the third wave feminists would be that, well, society is what's making men more violent. Therefore, when we move away from this capitalist society, when we break everything down, then there will be less men in prison. It's not true.
The problem with that is when we've seen that tried out, more people end up in prison.
Yeah, that's true.
And the best example of that is the Gulag Archipelago. Solzhenitsyn called them the organs of the state. And he talked about how you'd get a knock on the door at night. You wouldn't know what you had done, but somebody had ratted you out. And eventually, we used to call the Soviet bloc a prison house of nations. Eventually everyone was going to be in prison because you had to feed the Gulag.
Yeah.
So, and now circling back, we are beating a dead horse here, but this is a good topic. Circling back, though, just to finish this up, if you want the best argument for why women should not be on the front lines in combat, go read The Rape of Nanking. All right? If you haven't read it, your library will have it. You can get it off Amazon. I got a copy for like $16. If you want to see what war is like for women, go check that out. It was when the Japanese took city of Nanking, it was weeks and weeks of nonstop gang rape.
Yeah, horrifying.
Yep.
Forced pornographic performances. The Japanese at one point suggested to the Chinese who were in the city, hey, if you want us to stop raping you, why don't you let us take some of your women and open brothels?
Yep.
You want to see women mutilate. I mean, the descriptions, I can't describe this on air, what they did to them. And let me tell you something. The people we fight out there, the people the United States military fights, they're bad people, and they will absolutely do this stuff. You want to see, and we're talking about this stupid pregnant flight suit. They would impale, Nanking, they would just impale the babies. They would cut the woman open, pull the fetus out, and impale it in front of her, then impale the woman.
That's the problem with
that is not the environment for women.
That's the problem with civilized standards. We talked about this a couple weeks ago when it comes to why is America always to blame for everything is people that accept responsibility on the world stage get punished, right? Well, people that accept war standards on the world stage are the people that are at a disadvantage in combat because folks like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the Taliban, they did not fight with those same standards. We've seen this. That's the case throughout history. All of these tyrannical, oppressive structures do not fight with the same standard that the West fights with.
Yep.
And so,
and that's why you end up with UN troops in Africa raping people.
Yep.
Yeah. That's why that happens.
UN troops,
That is, the battlefield is not the place for women. Forget the strength differential. Just think about POWs. It's a horrifying thought. Yeah. All right, we went double the amount of time we normally have on a topic, but that was a good discussion. All right, so going from there, Andrew, let's talk about. We were just talking about POW conditions. Let's talk about immigrant conditions. Well, I saw a video this morning of an immigration camp set up. It looked like under an interstate. It looked like what you see happen with the homeless in LA. tell us what's going. And I know this is broad ranging. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so essentially, we've talked about this a couple times over the last couple weeks. I think I've brought it to the table every episode that I've been on. Has been Biden's immigration crisis. It's an absolute nightmare down there at the southwest border. And part of that has been, we discussed last week, that the administration did not allow reporters into these detention facilities because transparency doesn't matter to the Biden administration, just to every other administration that Democrats critique.
Where is AOC right now?
That is a great. Why is she not crying at these
I
facilities?
saw some great Photoshop pictures that put those pictures of her at these facilities.
Yes. And so finally, one of our Democratic representatives, I forget what the name is escaping me. It doesn't really matter. A Democratic representative who actually got to visit one of those facilities got images and released them to Axios in an exclusive this morning. And we're going to throw those pictures up on the screen because it looks far worse than it did under the Trump administration. So exclusive photos from inside a U.S. Customs and Border Protection temporary overflow facility in Donna, Texas, reveal the crowded makeshift conditions at the border as the government's longer-term child shelters and family detention centers fill up. I think we have a second picture here that's going to zoom in a little bit closer on some of those that we'll show you as well. We spoke about the Donna facility last week. We're talking about a facility that is 700% capacity, 729% capacity. Children are being held long past the 72-hour holding period, some to 10 days, according to certain reports. And we've discussed this pretty much ad nauseum because the left discussed it ad nauseum under the Trump administration. Far better conditions. They spoke about it for far more time, and now they don't want to talk about far worse conditions with the same urgency.
Yeah, and it's a problem. We're not doing it. This isn't just whataboutism. This was a problem under the Trump administration, and you know what? We got it fixed because we told them, stop coming. You're going to stay in your country. We fixed it, and now they've unfixed it.
And you get at a perfect point there is that we sat down earlier this week with Ken Cuccinelli, who was an immigration official under the Trump administration, I believe the Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security for a period of time, and we spoke to him, and that's essentially what he got at, was that the idea of comprehensive immigration reform is a joke. The idea of taking an issue that has plagued the United States for literally 200 years, we've been discussing immigration in this country. We are a nation of immigrants. We've discussed it constantly. So taking that broad issue that has had millions and millions of solutions that were piecemeal and didn't really work and resulted in new problems, taking that and solving it in one bill is a joke. And so we need a patchwork is essentially what we discussed. Unfortunately, that patchwork is not what the Biden administration is looking for. Instead, they want a pathway to amnesty for 11 to 22 million illegal immigrants. 8 years, they would be fully naturalized and fully enfranchised voters. And all those things are coupled with the fact that legal immigration, they want to make the system easier. We've discussed that on the show as well. Obviously, as a conservative and as a free market person, I would love to see the legal system get a little bit less tight and the border system get a little bit more tight. Unfortunately, the Biden immigration plan also has absolutely no border restriction provisions and no other restrictions to illegal immigration. So they want everyone to come to the table and say, okay, we're going to make the legal immigration system simpler. We're going to provide a pathway to citizenship for the people who are here, but we are going to do nothing to re-restrict the system. And so what I want to ask you guys is, we've seen a lot of different kind of discussions of how this should go, whether Republicans should come to the table and try to negotiate and make a better plan for comprehensive immigration reform, whether they should just try to see this bill killed with a filibuster. Even Democrats are delaying it in the House. But when this comes to the table and it's really discussed, should Republicans really be trying to negotiate on this, or should they say this bill is a joke and it's not fixable, it's not solvable at this point?
I think there's room to negotiate within there, and I think it's worth trying. But we can't compromise. We can't compromise too much. Like there's so much that can be lost here that I think it's always worth trying to see if we could push this back to the right a little bit. But no, I mean. Yeah, I started out basically saying yes, and now I'm saying no. So no.
Sometimes I talk myself out of a position I was in. An 8-year path to citizenship is crazy. Rush, before he passed away, he suggested, okay, give them amnesty.
Green card, absolutely.
The condition, though, 25 years until they can vote. Let's give them a chance to assimilate in instead of coming in and the vote being essentially the quid pro quo that illegals then provide to Democrat politicians who helped get them in. say, look, no, 25 years, we'll give you amnesty tomorrow. 25 years until they can vote. Nobody's interested in it. That should tell us everything.
Exactly.
Absolutely everything. This is not about human rights. This is not about poor children. This is not about parents who are struggling to give their families a better chance.
No.
This is about votes. That's all this is.
Exactly.
We could have offered amnesty, 25-year moratorium on voting. After that, they can vote. Nobody interested in it.
The odds of them doing that are so low, but that would be the best move.
Yes,
in my
no,
mind.
and
That would be great.
conservatives. I mean, look, conservatives are generally pro-immigration.
Yes.
Yes.
We're not. We believe in trade. We believe in trade of ideas and learning and exchanging cultures and those things, and that's what comes through immigration.
Yeah.
What were we one? We were 1 or 2 votes away in the House, a couple hundred years ago from speaking German. It was very, very close. We are a country of immigrants, and conservatives are pro-immigration, but we've got to do it the right way. And this idea that you just get them in just so they can vote is absurd, and it's so unfair to them. When you watch that video of the traffickers getting the people out of the van, swimming across, there's no telling what happened to the women on that trip.
On the
There's
trip, exactly.
no telling.
It is incredibly dangerous. And you got at a great point there as well. Cuccinelli also said, and this is a quote, the piece that we're going to be running on this and on the history of kind of this immigration. If you want to give them full residency for the rest of their lives, fine. Their children, fully naturalized citizens, no question about it. I would say that the folks who did this improperly should never be able to.
Oh yeah, I'm not arguing that it should be done. I'm just using it as an example.
But my next question to you guys is, because I think that this has been, and I am certainly in the same camp, the response on the right has been, let the bill die. There's no reason that we should come to the table and negotiate on this. There's been pretty widespread, concern that this bill is too big and too dangerous to even, to even try to make piecemeal and fix it. If we don't, what is the alternative? Because the way I see it, if we don't try to fix it before they cram it through in the next 4 years, that's 2 to 4 years of nothing changes.
But it's not a fix. It's a patch. It's a Band-Aid. The end result, though, on the spectrum of conservative to liberal, the end result, instead of being in the middle, is going to be over here. It's all we're doing is just not letting them go quite as far as they want to go. They're not going to compromise with us.
No.
And that's what drives me crazy about freaking DC politics.
Yeah.
We're always the ones compromising. Why don't they ever compromise? When was the last time there was a compromise that ended more favorably for Republicans or conservatives than for Democrats?
It doesn't happen.
Never.
No,
That's it. The only place we have gotten that is with judicial appointments. It's the only thing I can think of.
So we keep the stalemate we have now, and we essentially, the borders are open at this point. We've seen several people say that over the last couple months. But that's 2 to 4 years of Biden leaving an open border. That, no matter what happens here.
But so what is the patchwork then? What do we cut it in half? Or what do you think?
I'm wondering, is there?
I sound like I'm arguing. I'm not. I'm curious.
No, I'm curious as well. Essentially, I wanted to kind of work through it with you guys. I mean, I don't even know when it comes to, what percentage amnesty, all of these things. My question is essentially, do the Republicans go to the table for a stricter border in hopes that at the very least, maybe you do have to normalize and naturalize 11 to 22 million, but at least it stops there.
Bleeding.
But it won't. That's yes. If it would stop there.
But it wouldn't.
It won't.
No.
But it won't.
Yeah.
Because it's cloaked in a human rights. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing. It just looks like it's human rights, but it's not. It's just about Democrat votes. We've done that before, too. Reagan did that. Reagan did that back in the 80s. Oh, this is going to put an end to it. Amnesty, we're done.
Yeah.
30 years later, good gravy.
We're talking about it again.
35 years later, we're talking about it again. It didn't get fixed.
No.
Yeah.
Bush tried to do that in 2006. And he had the closest thing, I thought, to a reasonable setup. They were going to do amnesty for some of them, but they were going to document everyone. You're going to know who was coming in, who was here, who was not supposed to be here. You were going to get rid of the shadow economy, make sure the people were treated right, all of these things. And nobody would buy that. Neither Republicans nor Democrats would jump in there. So it's. Do you have any last minute thoughts on this? It's going to be interesting to see where this goes. I don't know what Republicans will do. Well, given that Republicans are generally feckless,
Just
I
roll
imagine
over.
that. Yeah, I imagine they'll
Probably.
roll over. Which, if your representative or senator rolls over on this, just vote them out. I mean, honestly, I'm about to the point that I'm thinking just screw it. We've always said it's better to have a Republican in there than a Democrat. But, none of that is all of that is reversible in 2 years or 6 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really wonder about give them a cycle of what they want. Mm-hmm. But I'm not saying do that. I might get fired if I said that. I wouldn't. We are not ideologues like that at the Western Journal or at WJ Live. All right, we are almost to the end of our show. We can end on a kind of a fun up note here. I was on paid time off, PTO, last week, and all of a sudden on Friday, I start seeing these videos of Biden falling, and I think, man, somebody did a deep fake. Good gracious, I hope we haven't covered this. And then I look, oh my gosh, it was real.
Yeah.
And what was real? It was this footage of Biden going up the steps of Air Force One. Stay tuned, we've got more stuff to show you, but roll the footage of Biden. Oh my gosh! Oh no! Oh no! Oh, he straightened up there. Oh, and we got a little. We got another angle here, folks. Oh my gracious! Good night. Holy cow!
Lucky he didn't hit his head there.
Yeah. Well, would it really? All right, I love now cut back to us for a minute because I want to imitate. I love this number, right?
The pep in the step at the end.
That's show he's okay. So, immediately people began comparing this to Gerald Ford. If you remember, Gerald Ford slipped coming down Air Force One years and years ago. Can we roll that footage?
Josh, none of us remember that.
For President Ford, the year seemed full of snags. In June, he fell
What's
down
different?
the plains
Oh,
steps
it's
on
raining.
Austria.
Oh, they're metal steps. Oh, they're slippery.
But a whole lot more serious were the two attempts
And
to
he is
assassinate
back
him.
up on his
The
feet.
first occurred on September 5th as the president was
And
walking
appears
the
to be
Capitol
fine.
building in Sacramento, California.
And I thought we were going to see Gerald slip again in video I had not seen before. So immediately the left begins, this is no big deal. It happened with Gerald Ford. Now, they mocked Gerald Ford for decades over this. I mean, that is the thing he is known for. That's what Chevy Chase
eating
made
the
him
tamale
known
wrong.
for. He would. Oh, I didn't know that one. But
He doesn't know how to eat a
he's
tamale
super
either.
clumsy. That's how they painted him. That's how Chevy Chase painted him. That's how he's been ever since then. Now, I've got one more clip to show you. The media, while they said almost nothing about Biden's trip, here's some video of Trump, and they did say something about this. Let's show the Trump video. This was at West Point. Nothing compared to Biden. Nothing compared to Biden, but let me read you something. New York Times ran this headline about this headline about the video you just watched. Trump's halting walk down ramp raises new health questions.
Gingerly stepping.
Friday, this is the headline they ran for Biden. Biden is, quote, doing 100% fine, end quote, after tripping while boarding Air Force One. Washington Post, meanwhile, ran this headline for Trump at West Point. Trump tries to explain his slow and unsteady walk down a ramp at West Point. Slow and unsteady walk. What did they say about Biden on Friday? Biden stumbles climbing stairs on Air Force One. The double standard is ridiculous. And so the funny thing to me, or not funny, the telling thing to me is that they immediately began comparing him to Gerald Ford. You make comparisons like that when you're trying to minimize something or dismiss something. They know this was bad. They know it was bad. So what does what do we take from this?
For me, I mean, we could say, oh, I take that he's an unsteady leader. We knew that already. We've seen that from the gaffes and other slip-ups. What really gets to me is that his press team is actually incredibly incompetent as well, is what I got out of this, because immediately they came out with this thread about how, oh, well, it was windy. It was windy. He's doing well, but it was windy.
14 miles an hour.
Exactly. So not that windy. And second of all, the most important part of that is that throughout the campaign trail, people joked about this is a guy who a stiff wind could blow over. Yeah. And so what did they do? They bought right in. They actually played into an old joke about an old person.
A stiff wind did blow him over.
Actually, like,
oh no, a stiff wind did blow him
Yes.
over. That's not what I look for in a leader.
I think at times pointing out the media hypocrisy can seem a little tired, but it's always nice for all those deniers out there that claim that, oh no, they're all CNN, MSNBC,
unbiased.
they're all completely unbiased. It's nice to have a clear example of, look at this. Like they don't care at all. They're just pushing the Democratic Party. That was what they were. That's their only purpose at this point.
Well, in 2016, wasn't it 93% of votes from journalists went to Hillary? I think it was 93%, and then like 3% went to Bernie, and like
not left enough.
2% went to somebody else, and then Trump got half a percent. Trump got
so you just have like 96% of journalists telling the rest of America why they're stupid.
Exactly. Well, there's a funny thought for you. Hillary amongst journalists gets roughly the same numbers that Saddam Hussein was getting. So that's an interesting way to think about it. He was doing better. He was doing like 99.7. They were working hard for that last 0.3% though, folks. Let me tell you, he had Uday and Kusei out there. All right, that's it. Man, we had a great time hanging out with you guys today. I dropped the ball at the first. I want to thank our sponsor, PatriotDepot.com. PatriotDepot.com. That's where you can get all of your gear for the conservative revolution. T-shirts, mugs, calendars, all posters, puzzles, all kinds of cool stuff for conservatives. You can get it at PatriotDepot.com. If you use % off. Additionally, as I always say, thank you for watching. Thank you for checking out the Western Journal, westernjournal.com, reading our content there. You all support us, make the journalism we do possible. If you feel led to support us in ways other than just reading and checking out our ads and stuff, if you feel led to support us in other ways, you can go to westernjournal.com/join, westernjournal.com/join. There's several ways there that you'll be able to partner with us to continue getting the truth out. Andrew was talking about an interview with Ken Cuccinelli. We do interviews with all sorts of movers and shakers. We get exclusive content from them that you're just not going to find other places. It's not cheap to bring that to you. So we're grateful for all you do. If you feel inclined to support us even more, that's a great blessing. But thank you for what you do in the meantime. Last but not least, if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to click the subscribe button. After you click subscribe, a little bell's going to come up. You'll click that bell. That's going to make sure you get notified when we go live. So no shadow banning there. For Andrew, for Michael, for everybody else at the Western Journal, I'm Josh Manning. This is WJ Live. We're here every Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. We're going to see you tomorrow.